Aber says, I recently got a tractor-style riding lawnmower, so I can't zero-turn back and forth. I once watched you live stream as you played a mowing simulator video game. That is true. That happened. My graphics card died in the middle of that stream. I'm sure that was a coincidence because this mowing game wasn't that intensive, but I thought it was funny. What's the most efficient mowing pattern to clear the yard with minimal overlap or backtracking? Want to avoid 3-point turns if possible. Yeah, so here's the thing that gets me. When you have a zero-turn mower, they say that the right thing to do is you go down and then you make a zero-turn, you turn, and you come back. And to me, like, I guess if you're trying to stripe the yard in a very specific way, yes, that's what. But I think that's a little bit cart before the horse, if you will. Because to my mind, the zero-turn mowing, the goal is to get the stripes on the yard how you want them. And it's not the most efficient way because in order to make that 180 turn, you have to slow down. Especially if your turf isn't the best, because if you do a really fast 180 turn on a zero-turn mower, you'll tear up the yard. So, but even still, it will always be slower to make a 180 turn and go back the other way than to make like a 90-degree turn. So my approach, let's say you just have a rectangular pattern, okay? Rectangular yard. My approach is to make a path around the perimeter, throwing to the inside. Now, the reason when I say throwing to the inside, I mean I'm assuming you're not mulching. If you're mulching, then it doesn't matter. But like you'll have where the clippings shoot out, right? You'll have the exhaust chute, whatever it's called. So because if you're like up against a fence, or maybe you just don't want to blow clippings all over the sidewalk, I don't know. For me, I'm up against a fence a lot of the time. I'll blow to the inside, right? So I'm turning right and blowing to the right. And I'll get that. And I'll get as close to the fence as I can get with that. That's the other thing. The left-hand side of the mower, where you're not ejecting these clippings, you can get closer to the fence. Okay, so now I've got the perimeter mode. Now I turn, and I'm turning left, and I'm throwing to the outside. You have to throw to the outside because otherwise you'll just end up with a giant pile of clippings as you throw everything to the right, and you'll end the center of the yard. So you'll have a big pile of clippings. It's still good. So then we're just going to do a spiral, basically, okay? And we're just going to do a spiral all the way in until you have a little strip at the very center, and then choop, choop, you clean up that strip, and you're good to go. To me, that's the most efficient way of doing it because you are always moving forward, right? My goal when I'm mowing is to constantly be moving forward with as little overlap as possible, and to me, the sort of spiral inward is the way to do it. Now, as you get to more complicated shapes of yard, you'll start to get situations where, you'll do the spiral, and it gets small, and then there's a little bit over here, or maybe there's like a tree or an island or something, and you have to figure out the most efficient way to get around that and incorporate that, and that's just, half the fun of mowing. But that's the approach I use, and I think it's the most efficient approach. Even if you have a zero turn, as Tony DiMaggio points out, still doing the spiral mowing, you're going to be able to maintain speed, and your turns are going to be shorter, and you're going to keep your speed up compared to doing a 180, turning around and going back the other way. Okay. Alrighty. Well, now let's talk about FPV. We'll talk about FPV. Blunty, you're a handy guy. You do a lot of mowing?
Yeah, I do a reasonable amount of mowing.
Your thoughts about that? Any corrections or other things you would say about that? I respect your opinion.
I have such an awkward yard in all aspects that there's no way you have to make up your own rules of how to mow that yard, it's an old yard, and it's on a pond, and everything's on a hill, so all the sand and dirt pulls off of all the tree roots. So I either would need to take a Sawzall for a week and cut up all the tree roots in my yard, or you just have to dodge those areas and then weed them later. Yeah. So it becomes this weird maze of where you can go and where you can't without breaking the lawnmower blade.
Yep.
And
Yep.
And it is what it is, right?
Yeah. And you go, okay, these two areas, I'm going to treat them as separate areas because they don't flow together well. And if I flow from one to the other and make that part of the spiral, But then some days you're like, I'm doing the whole thing. And you do the entire yard as one great big spiral. But then these two little areas finish first. And you're like, ooh, is that more efficient? And you just spend a lot of time thinking about it. I do anyway. All right. Let's move on.